Today is Easter Sunday, and I'd like to talk about death and rebirth. So in the Christian calendar, this is the time of resurrection. So just consider what this means for us individually and collectively. This idea of renewal, the sensation of really fully allow yourself to live something until it's done, until it's dead, until it's completed, and then rebirthing into the next moment, allowing yourself to be renewed and reborn and uplifted. Now consider this against another perspective of materialism and attachment and the sense of living as a physical human being forever. So life immortal, but in the physical substance, and how we get attached to each and every moment, each and every memory, to people, to places, to circumstances. And don't let them die, don't let them go, don't let them release from our system so we can flow into the next moment. So inviting us to consider death and rebirth and our whole view of how we live in relationship to existence in the sense of free flow, being present, being here, being now, being alive in this moment, and letting this moment live and die and be reborn and reborn and reborn and reborn. So this constant sense of resurrection happening moment to moment to moment to moment. Are we able to let go of the things that we enjoy or that are painful or somewhere in between? Can we open ourselves presently into what is emerging through us in this moment? So there's this sense of like leaning into the future, leaning into the field of possibility, leaning into the present moment with an openness, without the burden of being pulled back. The sensation like the shoulders, like got a couple of straps on, big heavy rucksack pulling us back, where we're overburdened and weighed down by our interpretations of the world. So let's consider this a little bit more deeply in terms of the way that we perceive reality. So our past experience generates assumptions and beliefs, stories, and then our personality attaches and associates itself and identifies with these stories. And so we talk out of our wound story or our success story or our triumph stories or our miserable stories. We associate and identify with them from the past and assume this association equals our identity. And then our friends meet us as the filter that we present to them in the world. So if we're particularly miserable about something, life, existence, melancholic all the time, our friends may well relate to us as if that's who we are. And unknowingly or unconsciously, we keep referring back to the past experiences and identifying with them, and this identification gives us our view, our perception lens, which we look out from. So we keep looking out from the past. I call this looking through the filtered glasses of perception. And if you imagine you have a pair of glasses on that are coloured orange or red or purple or green, then that's going to influence how you see the world. But if someone one day were to take your glasses off or clean the lens of the coloured filter, you would see, with 20/20 vision, you'd see clearly what's actually here. And our thoughts and our beliefs and our stories and our assumptions make up the colours on the glasses that we wear, which influence the way we perceive. And how we perceive is equal to how we behave. So we act out of our beliefs. This is very important to understand this, that our perception is key to our experience. So what you focus from, it's the way you see out in the world, what you see through in the world, what you interpret as being here, is going to influence to a very high degree the way you relate with what you're looking at. And our relationship is then driven and governed by our perceptions, which is governed by our past. which is governed by our attachment, which is governed by our identification and assumption that these things are real and true. So on Easter Sunday, when we're looking at resurrection, death and rebirth, not just looking at the possibility of physical resurrection, the rebirth of our biology moment to moment to moment, which happens with every breath, and the transformation of our cells, but looking at the rebirth of our perceptual mechanism, so that we can recognize that we can free ourselves from our past attachments simply by allowing them to know that we have already lived them. We can take our hands off them, let them go, and recreate, refresh, renew, revision in this present moment by releasing the attachment. When you let go or allow yourself to die to the attachment, to the identification, to the assumptions that are given from the past, what that then makes available is this whole field of possibility. The infinity of life opens up for us, and we remember, reconnect, reawaken the child in us that is curious, that is alive in us right now. It's a spirit, heartful way of seeing the world, which is fresh. So instead of looking at the tree with the assumption, oh, there's the tree, I know everything about the tree, you actually look with open eyes and actually see and feel and sense the energy, the presence, the aliveness of you and the tree in this moment, without the judgments and assumptions from the past. When you look at your family, your friends, your children, your lovers, your partners, your colleagues, when you look at them without the assumption of who you think they are, based on previous experiences and judgments we've made, we start to meet each other in the freshness of the present moment. And in the freshness, there is life. There's life. And when there's life, there's love, there's connection, there's beauty, there's wonder, there's aliveness. This is the experience of rebirth. So we're rebirthing the life inside of us, moment to moment to moment, through our biology, which then influences our hormones and emotion, energy, motion, constantly being reborn. We become much more fluid in this relationship with what we call identity, and see identity more as a functional mechanism as opposed to us. It's something that we can borrow and use, much like an actor wears a costume for a certain moment, because it's functional and useful to have a name and a bit of a story and a history sometimes, because it allows us to connect in a certain role for a moment in this functional, three-dimensional reality. Useful, but we can take off the costume, the mask, the role, and allow ourselves to be naked presence. So right now I sit here as I am. Aliveness, awareness, love, presence. And I'm fully aware that there's this identity called Guy, my history, my story, and I love all the dances and expressions and relationships and circumstances that I can see and remember and connect with. The difference is I identify and allow myself to rest into my I amness as my deep, authentic essence and presence. And this I amness then speaks through Guy, and sometimes will borrow the language of story and the mechanisms of belief. But I don't attach myself to them, and I don't define myself by them. So the death rebirth is releasing the attachment to the identification with the past, as if it's us. But it doesn't release the functionality. So then you start to recognize that your presence moves through these identities that we create for certain purposes. But on the in-breath, breathing in, there's a pause. On the out-breath, there's a pause. And this pause is a reminder for us to go into the stillness and the unlimited presence and the field of possibility and openness in this moment, to rebirth from the emptiness into the fullness. So it's constantly here in our breathing pattern to Breathe in. Here I am. Breathe out. Here I am. Moving through the movement of breath. Moving through the movement of the body, emotion, self-expression, and this wonderful character that we've chosen to occupy and move through and express through. So this is a reminder on Easter Sunday. Death, rebirth happens on multiple levels, constantly, ceaselessly, continuously, and it's a renewal process. And this renewal, we come to a deeper state of aliveness. So recognize the places inside of you where there's a rigid belief, revenge, judgment, opinion, position, agenda. So these things aren't so difficult to notice because they also have a biological impact. They make us feel tense and stressed and ill. And you can recognize it in our relationships, which are uncomfortable, conflicting, positional. These are the symptoms of rigid perceiving, interpretation, judgment. And just consider this, in releasing the way that we have been perceiving habitually, releasing the constant interpretations and assumptions and judgments we project onto others in the world and ourselves, the expectations and standards and perfectionism and all these things. In releasing all of this, we make space for the rebirth of our natural, aware, heartful aliveness here and now, in this moment. We wake up as us. We allow ourselves to be born as us, as awareness, as life, as presence. And this gives us all the quality of experience, all the gratitude, all the love, all the deep connection that we believe we're seeking for through the identity and through philosophy and religion and all the external forms that are telling us that we are more than just the mortal coil. But this is the actual living practice of this. It's not a belief, it's not assumption, it's not a philosophy. It's an in-breath, a knowing, and an out-breath. So in the dropping of the untrue, the true reveals itself. In the dying to the assumption that we are the identity in the past, the story, we drop our judgments and attachments and positions, and the freedom that we already are reveals itself. There's nothing inhibiting it. There's nothing stopping it. There's nothing preventing it. There's no assumptions or limitations or identifications or definitions which are saying you are not aliveness, because you know it directly. So this is my Easter message, and it's full of words, but I'm repeating, and reminding that you are love and you are life and you're beautiful and you're heartful and you're wonderful. And aliveness is an opportunity given to us as the gift of life itself, moment to moment to moment. And we can claim it simply by releasing our attachment to the past, to the future, to all sorts of interpretation. Release, let go, happily die to what was, open up to what is, and allow yourself to lean into what's coming, like the fullness of presence on all the different levels. So lots of love from me, Guy, to you.